Dear researchers, research approaches, strategies, and designs are different from one to one. According to the research questions, we decide the research process carefully. Case study research is a popular strategy of paramount importance. The case study research design usually involves qualitative methods, but quantitative methods are sometimes also used. Actually, it is generally believed that the case study method was first introduced into social sciences by Frederick Lee Clay in 1829. Today, it has ramified to almost every other field. Therefore, today we have brought an expert who is practicing case study research in his research career. We also invited one of our students to sit in the research lounge for the fruitful discussion. Our resource person now on stage. Without taking much time from you, let's introduce them. Professor Ruwan Abesekara. Ruwan Abesekara is a professor in the Department of Finance of Commerce and Management Faculty, University of California. Professor Abesekara obtained his BSc Honours degree in Industrial Management with a first class from the University of California. He won the prestigious Ceylon Tobacco Gold Medal for the best students in the Industrial Management Special Degree Program and Haley's Award for Best Undergraduate Research. Professor Abesekara completed his MBA from the University of Colombo with a merit pass, winning the CIMA subject prize for accounting and MIS subject. He won a full scholarship to pursue his PhD from the Bournemouth University in the UK and completed PhD in 2015. Moreover, Professor Ruwan holds a postgraduate diploma in marketing offered by SIM. He was the former head of the Department of Finance and the MBA coordinator. His expertise in the entrepreneurship field in the microfinance sector. He is an expert in the case study method of qualitative research. His research interests include microfinance, entrepreneurship, and human resource management. Our next resource person, Ms. Bavatarami Tevaraj. Bavatarami Tevaraj is a postgraduate research student at the Department of Chemical and Process Engineering, University of Moratuwa. The academic journey began with a BSc Honours in Engineering from the same institution in 2021. She is working in the Micrology Research Group, a dynamic and influential research collective at the University of Moratuwa. Operating under the guidance of the esteemed Dr. Thilini U. Aryadasa, notably, this research group has been pivotal in advancing sustainability and promoting the concept of circular bioeconomy through microbiology bioproduction. Moreover, her scholarly contribution extend beyond the laboratory with publication in high-impact Scopus Index journals as an emerging research student. Dear Sir and Ms. Bavatarami, Research Lounge is open to you to pop up your discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naini. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I think I must thank Dr. Naini Gunawardana, Senior Assistant Librarian of Moratuwa University, inviting me for this research launch. I actually feel honored, and at the same time, I would like to have I think Ms. Bavatarani as the sort of moderator for this discussion. Great. Okay. Now, what I'm going to discuss today is that case study method. So before I talk about what case study method is and when it can be used and how it can be used and I will give you some practical examples also. So before that, I just would like to, position case study method in qualitative research domain. So when you say qualitative research, as you are aware, I think the research philosophy is going to be social constructivism, or you can say interpretivism, right? Where we believe in multiple realities, right? So I think that is the sort of philosophy uh, that is applicable to qualitative research. So in qualitative research, there are a number of qualitative research types, right? For example, you have got phenomenology, you have got ethnography, narratives, action research, grounded theory, and case study method, right? So if you are, uh, you know, doing a qualitative research, so it is always better to select one type: case study, narratives, phenomenology, or grounded theory. So if I look at, the usage of these different types and the popularity in recent times, I have seen that case study has been very popular, right? I think I have seen a lot of scholars, researchers, they use case study to conduct their research. And at the same time, now I can see that phenomenology also is becoming popular, right? Uh, so, so as I said earlier, so today our focus is on case study method. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch upon these contents in my uh, discussion today. But the audience, at any point, you can stop me and ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer, right? So the contents would be uh, definition of case study method, when to use case study method, case study design, data collection, data analysis, validity and reliability, and finally, replication and triangulation. Now, so when I say case study method, there are number of contributors in introducing case study method in modern era, but I really follow Robert K. Yin. I think his name pops up all the time. If you ask people who are using case study method, 9 out of 10 would say they are following Yin's case study method. So I personally, I religiously follow his way. That doesn't mean that the other authors suit me fine, but still I prefer this one. So are other most of the researchers. So according to Yin, case study is an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon in depth and within its real life context, especially when the boundaries between phenomenon and the context are not clearly evident. Now, if you look at this definition, I think one thing which really stands out is uh, case study investigates a contemporary phenomenon. So I think that means we are using case study to explore something that is happening now. So what does it mean? So that means case study cannot be used for things that happen in the past or things that are happening in the future. So I think we can use case study For example, things that are happening now. For example, I always tell to my students when I'm teaching this at undergraduate level, okay, one of the things that we can explore is ragging takes place at universities. So it is a contemporary thing that is happening now. So I think we can use case study method. The next, if you really look at this definition, the next point is the boundaries between the phenomenon and the context are not clearly evident. I think this is not unique to case study method. This is unique to all qualitative other types as well, because one of the reasons why we use qualitative methods in particular case study method is where the phenomenon, right, and the context, if you really look at, the boundaries are blurred, not clearly evident, right? So just to make it a bit clearer, if you are trying to do a quantitative research, okay, now we got independent variables view, a dependent variable. So I think we presume that our dependent variable is influenced by maybe 3 or 4 independent variables, right? Whereas here, I don't want to use the word dependent variable. My running example is ragging taking place at the university. Ragging could be influenced by many factors, many variables, right? We don't know, right? So we only know when you go to the field, when we conduct interviews, then only we can identify number of reasons or the factors that could have a bearing on the ragging. So that means the context and the phenomenon. Phenomenon means the problem at hand, right, is not clear. See, so the other thing is now we know that when it comes to quantitative research, our focus is on generalization. So we look at a larger sample and we want to generalize our findings to the population. So can we achieve that in case study method? So remember here when I say case study method, today I am discussing qualitative case study. So quantitative or mix also, remember. But today my focus is qualitative. Yes, qualitative research. We never want to, generalize our results based on the sample size. So that means statistical generalization cannot be achieved in case study method. Instead, what we are trying to achieve is we call it analytical generalization. Right? So what do you mean by analytical generalization? Analytical generalization means we expand and generalize theories. That's what we are going to do. So by conducting a case study method, finally, we develop theories or we expand existing theories. So that is called analytical generalization as opposed to statistical generalization that we are concerned with quantitative research. And you must be wondering, so what is case? What are the cases? So examples are given on these slides. The cases could be individuals, cases can be organizations, cases can be processes, programs, neighborhoods, institutions, and events. For example, I can select, maybe 5 executives working for mass holding, right? And there I can consider these individual as cases. Or I can consider Department of Finance. Recently, we implemented ISO 9001 at Department of Finance where I work. So I think then we can look at how ISO has been implemented in Department of Finance and what are the barriers the department face. So there we can consider department as a case, right? So so cases could be, as I mentioned, it could be individuals, it could be programs, maybe MBA program at Moratuwa University. It could be an institution like Chartered Institute, right? It depends on research questions and your focus. This is very, very important. I always ask my students, undergraduate and postgraduate, when they have decided to use case study method, I want them to justify why you are using case study method over other qualitative methods and over other methods, right? So when justifying, you have to look at three conditions, if you like. These three conditions are, as you can see on this slide, so there's a table. The first column is method. Second one is form of research question. Third is requires control of behavior events. And the last one is focus on contemporary events. So I think conditions that you have to meet, basically meet are type of research question, whether you are going to control the behavior of the, for example, participants, or whether it is a contemporary events. Now, if you look at this table, the last row, the case study. Now, if you are using case study, remember, your form of research question should start with how and why, right? So when you are writing research question, for example, you can write, why do senior students rank junior students? How do they rank? That's how you write research questions. So if you use how and why, then one of the condition is satisfied to be able to do a case study. I put an asterisk mark here. Why I put an asterisk mark? If needed, you can use what also. A question starting from what, but how and why are mostly recommended. The next one is in case study method, you are not going to control the behavior, right? So that means now you are, let's say you are interviewing undergraduates of universities in your ragging my example. So they actually operate in a natural environment. You are not going to, change their behavior like what we do in experiments sometimes. Then contemporary event, yes, I mentioned case study could be used only for things that are happening now, right? Yes. So if the research questions start from how and why, if you are not going to control the behavior, focusing on contemporary, then you can use case study method. Now in this table, for example, if you look at, as you and me, we are very familiar with survey method, where we administrate a questionnaire. So let's look at survey. So their form of research question can start with who, what, where, how many, how much. So you are not going to control the behavior like case study also, and you are focusing on contemporary event, yes. So based on the answers to these three conditions or questions, you can use either experiment, survey, archival analysis, history or case study. So our attention is now for case study. Okay, so there are three types of case studies: exploratory, descriptive, explanatory. So when I say exploratory case study, which is used to explore situations. So that means when you do a thorough literature review, for example, I think there's a dearth of research done, very little, right? Nobody has done a research before, right? Then that is the case. I mean, you cannot develop a conceptual framework, independent, dependent. So then you have to explore. There's a curiosity. So then actually you are trying to do a qualitative case study, right? In order to, examine what is happening. Then you get another type called descriptive case study. Descriptive case study means actually you don't have a research question or object to begin with, right? Here you are trying to describe an intervention or phenomenon. For example, uh, Vesak festival in Sri Lanka, Vesak, right? So you are just try to explain how it is celebrated, right? How people engage in Vesak festival, something like that. It's a descriptive. And the explanatory case study means where actually it belongs to quantitative research, where you look at causal relationship, cause and effect, independent variable, dependent variable. What's the relationship? So I think today our discussion is largely based on exploratory case study, right? That's the topic today. Then when you say case study method, I think this is one of the popular questions. Okay, whether it's going to be single case or multiple case, which is better? For example, my running example, ragging. So if I select only California University to do my research to explore how ragging take place, then it is going to be a single case study. So, but if I select more than one cases, so let's say more than one universities, let's say California University and Moratuwa University and Javatar University, then it becomes a multiple case study. And if you read the literature, I think some scholars say when it comes to multiple case studies, it is always better to have 4 to 6 case studies. I have seen that there are research papers done where you have about 10, 12 cases, individual cases sometimes. Even the in organization has cases. That's all right. There are no hard and fast rule, but in general, we say better to have 4 to 6 cases if it is a multiple case study, right? So then what's the difference? Which is better, single or multiple? It depends, right? So multiple case study enables researchers to explore differences within and between cases, right? And the goal is to replicate findings across cases. I think I would say multiple case study is fascinating. Why? Now, if you, let's say, for example, let's say if you select universities, uh, for my running example, ragging, then let's say I select state universities and private universities in Sri Lanka, right? Uh, then we can see some similarities in my findings and dissimilarities. What are the similarities in state universities when it comes to ragging, right? So what are the dissimilarities between state universities and private universities? So in other words, you can compare and contrast your findings across cases when you go for multiple case study method as opposed to single case study method. In addition, multiple case study method gives strong analytical conclusions. Right? Multiple case also provides good theory. So I think I said to you one of the objectives of doing a qualitative research is to, build theories. I think then there's a high credibility. If you use multiple case study method in expanding theories and building new theories compared to using single case study. All right, let's look at research design in case study method. So I think here we, that direction. Design is all about direction of a research. So when it comes to case study, I think what are the main components of the research design? In a case study, you need to look at these 5 components. Studies question, its propositions, if any, its unit of analysis, the logic link into the data to the propositions, and criteria for interpreting findings. I think you need to have a research question to begin with. For example, why do senior students rank junior students? And in qualitative research, sometimes, remember, not always, you can have propositions, right? In quantitative research, we have hypotheses, but in qualitative research, we have propositions. So there is a bit of similarity. So when it comes to hypothesis, it is backed by literature. Are actually put across not based on the literature per se, but sometimes based on your experience, your gut and hunch feeling, right? So example for a proposition is you can say, okay, the ragging, you take about ragging, of course, it's a well-researched area. Let's say public-private partnerships provide lot of benefits to parties involved, right? Public-private partnership. So I think when you read the literature, let's say the literature is silent about public and private partnerships. Let's assume. So, but we assume, okay, if there's a collaboration between public and private parties, it will give a lot of benefits to. So that's a typical proposition for you. So you can have proposition. So unit of analysis. So I think we are going to discuss today, all right, in detail what is unit of analysis. I think in your research, you have to identify whether you look at individual as your unit or whether you look at group as a unit or whether you look at the organization as a unit in order to carry out your study. Then the logic link in the data to the proposition. So that means once you collect the data, right, let's say your research is all about public-private partnerships, then you interview, parties involved, parties relevant to public, parties relevant to private. Then you ask various questions. Then when you analyze the data, if you come across, they all talk about benefits, advantages, then your proposition is right. What is your proposition? Proposition is it gives a lot of benefits. So data also says the same thing, right? So that analytical technique is called pattern matching in case study method. So I think when you analyze the data, you can see a pattern looming. Everybody talks about, oh, that's good, right? Then the criteria for interpreting findings. So I think in quantitative research, we use, that different methods, for example, p-value to interpret the data. In the case study method, can use sometime, I think, rival explanation building. I will explain like some techniques, right, to interpret the findings. So I will explain what these techniques are when I talk about analytical techniques and strategies available for case study method. So what I want to tell you is basically, if you are using a case study method, you must have a research question, maybe one overarching research question, main question. Then proposition, yes, if you want, you can have, otherwise you can forget it. Unit of analysis is paramount important. And when analyzing the data, then you have to use some strategies and techniques. Okay, now this is very, very important. Can we use theory in case study method? Right? Because some research types, qualitative research types, for example, grounded theory introduced by Strauss and Glasses in 1967, right? So I think even today, I think when you are carrying out a research by using grounded theory, we do not use a theory or theories to shed light on the study. However, in case study method, we can use a theory as a theoretical underpinning. A theory, or if you want, you can use a one theory as a grand theory, or maybe can use few theories. But I have seen that in some cases, you don't use theory. However, you use a conceptual framework. And once you have done a thorough literature review, you formulate a conceptual framework, but this conceptual framework is different to that of the conceptual framework that are used in quantitative research, where you have independent variables, dependent variable, moderator, mediator. Here, conceptual framework is you are just trying to, look at connections between factors. Right? It's just like a mind map, if you like. So if you have that kind of a mind map, it will guide you to carry out the research. But I always tell to my undergraduates and postgraduate students when they are using case study method, I always ask, are you using a theory to shed light on your study? Right? I always encourage, I think, which is a good, because then you can narrow it down, your focus. So the theories, it could be individual theories like personality theory, it could be group theories, organizational theories, societal theories. So I think in management, I think we use different theories. For example, we use institutional theory of Scout, Scots. Then we use social capital theory. For example, we use human capital theory. Then we can use some other theories like co-production, co-creation, resource-based view, right? Theory of planned behavior. So those are very popular theories that are used in management research, and it depends on the discipline also. For example, theory of planned behavior is largely used by entrepreneurship researchers, right? So I think I strongly recommend to use a theory if you are using case study method. This is very, very important, right? What's the case study boundary and what's the unit of analysis? I think when you are doing the research using case studies, it's important to identify the boundary and the unit of analysis. For example, my running example, ragging. So I think, let's say I have decided it's going to be a single case study. I look at how ragging takes place at Cali University. So I think then I could have right? Kelaniya University as the boundary, because I am not going to collect data from outside. And my unit of analysis could be the individuals. If I really, my focus is on individuals, not the university. Of course, university as the case, but analysis, if I look at, variances of the different individuals from different faculties, it could be sometimes individuals. So, the boundary is determined based on the propositions and the research questions. So I think with regard to the time period covered, relevant social group, organization, types of evidence to be collected. So on the other hand, unit of analysis is the main that is something. So let me explain your example to illustrate a multiple case study. So this is one of the studies that I conducted. So I think the topic was explore government services in the Sri Lankan microfinance sector. So let me give you an overview about this problem. Right now, I hope you know what microfinance is. So I think microfinance institution provides services such as loans, we call it microcredit, and business development services, meaning counseling, training to clients. So I think when I went through the literature, I found out nobody had done a study on business development service, how business development services finance institutions in Sri Lanka. Hardly studies done. So then I wanted to focus, because in general, these business development services are provided by counselors attached to MFIs, microfinance. When I say counselors, actually they are loan officers. So what they do is actually they give counseling to the clients. Sometimes they themselves provide training, financial literacy training, because they are to clients. So I think when I read the literature, I was informed that this success of the counseling intervention lies on the interaction between two parties. What does it mean? That means there are two parties in counseling. The counselor, in this example, the loan officer attached to microfinance institution, and the client. Client is actually the entrepreneur or the owner manager, right? So I think there's an interaction that happens between these two, right? So if the interaction is good, then both parties can achieve benefits. They can have better sales, better profits, because he is an entrepreneur, thanks to counseling. Whereas microfinance institution can achieve better loan repayments. Remember, MFIs give loans to clients, so they need their money back with interest. So if the counseling is brilliant, then the client will do their business well, they will make profits, and in turn they will make the loan repayment. So that's the logic, right? So I think then in this study, I want to find out how the counselor and the client collaborate, interact each other, right? So I think for this study, I embrace social constructivism, as I mentioned at the outset as my philosophy. So I think then I looked at multiple realities. So as I this is subjective based, not objective. and this is value laden, not value free, right? So I think I invariably I use inductive approach. You know that for a qualitative research we use inductive theory building, and of course then I decided to select 6 microfinance institutions to conduct interviews, right? And hence I resorted to multiple case study method. Why? There are more than one cases. So I think I selected 6 case studies, and it was an exploratory case study method. Okay, then I developed this simple conceptual framework. So there are no independent dependent variables, as you can see. On your left hand side, you have got counselor attached to MFI, entrepreneur who runs micro enterprises, right? So I think then MFI counselor provide BDS, business development services via counseling to owner manager. So this is a kind of a mind map. So in my study, I use a theory, very famous theory introduced by Park et al. In 1967, co-production theory. Today, actually, it has developed to co-creation. Today, people talk about co-creation. Still, co-production also is used in studies. So, co-production theory says it is a composed of joint efforts between two parties who jointly determine the output of their collaboration. So, in my study, I had two parties, counsel and the owner manager. So, I think this theory was really suitable for my study. Why? Joint efforts between two parties. So if the counsel and client put their efforts together, exert their efforts, then it will result in better results, right? So I think better synergy. So I use this theory as my theoretical underpinning. So in my study, I think I chose a case study. Why? My research questions start from how, why, what, as you can see. So one of my research questions was, why do counselors and owner managers co-produce? What are the factors that affect co-production between the counsel and the client? How do contextual factors affect co-production? So you can see questions satisfy the condition of having how, why, what questions. And it is a contemporary phenomenon, right? This is taking place now, and I did not control the behavior of the participants, so the people that I interview. So hence I use case study method for my study. So in my study, I had to decide case study boundary and unit of analysis. So my case study boundary was MFI, microfinance institution, and owner manager business relationship. Because remember here, we have two parties, MFI and owner manager. So I think then I have to look at both business relationship. My unit of analysis is not individuals. It was a dyadic relationship between counsel and the owner manager, right? So moving on, in case study method, how are you going to collect data? What are the data collection methods available? So according to Yin, right, before that, so let me before I talking about methods available. So when collecting data in case study method, you got to follow case study protocol. It is very important to follow the case study protocol. Why? By following it, you can enhance the reliability of your study. So when we carry out a research, no matter it is quantitative or qualitative, we have to improve reliability and validity, right? So reliability of a case study method can be improved by following the study protocol. Actually, we without our knowledge also, if one is following case study method, I mean, you are, I mean, unknowingly you are following these 4 steps that are here under case study protocol. So what is called case study protocol? So it has got 4 sections in it. First one is overall of the case study project, overview. So what do you mean by overview? Project objectives or readings. So that means, let's say in my example, now I'm actually moving from my ragging to now this co-production example, right? Now there, my main objective is to explore how counselors collaborate with clients. That's my watching objective, project objective, right? And obviously, I need to read the literature. Then the second one is field procedures, very, very important. So I think in my case, I selected 6 microfinance institutions. So how did I access to case studies, right? Remember, it was not easy. You need to have some contacts with those microfinance institutions. Otherwise, they never give data to outside people. So you need to have access. Then sources of data. What are the data that you are going to gather? Whether interview data, observations, or whether it's going to be secondary data, annual reports, internal records, things like that. And of course, then we think about language. So in my study, I conducted most of the interviews in Sinhalese and some in English and some I had to conduct in Tamil. I didn't know Tamil. I got the support of a person who was conversant in Tamil. So I think you have to really think about this is preparation before you go to the field, right? I mean, then case study questions. So remember, now you got a set of questions, your main questions, right? These are the main questions you got. Why do counselor, owner manager co-produce? In addition to that, case study questions means now you are going to collect data from 6 cases. In my case, you need to have questions, right? Questions means you have to prepare a semi-structured questionnaire to conduct it. As there, based on the case, sometimes you may have to change the question type, case study question. And of course, once you collect the data, then once you analyze the data, then finally you need to write the case study report. So, but when you are conducting a research, let's say for your PhD, report is going to be your thesis. So otherwise, it has to be a professional report that you are going to write. So remember, these 4 are very important when you are trying to collect the data. This is called case study protocol prescribed by Yin. Okay, now in case study method, how are you going to select cases and the respondents, right? So that this is sampling for you. What is the sampling case study? So you got to do 2 things. First, you need to have a criteria to select cases. Second, you need to have a criteria to select interviewees or respondents, right? So the method that you are using is called theoretical sampling rather than statistical sampling. I think I always like to say that we are using purposive sampling. We are going to select our cases, right? In my case, MFIs, and my interviewees, in my case, interviewees means counselors and the owner managers based on a purpose, right? Right? So you need to have a criteria. So coming back to my example, so how did I select my cases? 6 of them. how did I select my interviewees? When it comes to cases, MFIs, I realized that there are different types of MFIs available in Sri Lanka. Government MFIs, non-government MFIs, NGOs. Then we got bank MFIs, non-bank MFIs, cooperative MFIs. So I made sure I selected cases representing different types of MFIs. In addition to that, I noticed that MFIs use two lending methods when they are providing services to clients. Two lending methods are group lending and individual lending. So when selecting cases, I made sure I got cases that use individual lending and group lending. So that is how I selected cases based on a criteria. Then how I selected participants, counselors, and my clients, owner managers. What was the criteria? Right? So I think then I have to discuss with MFI. How can I select counselors? Then they said to me that please select a counselor who has got at least 3 years experience. Right? And the owner manager or the client who has had 3 years experience with MFI. So I got this input from MFI because you can't just sometimes lay down the criteria. You have to consult known people. So I think then finally I had this criteria and I thought I should select one counsel and two clients from each MFI. So that means I interviewed 3 into 6, 18 interviews altogether, right, from 6 cases. Okay, now in case study method, according to Yin, there are 6 sources of data available. So documents, archival records, interviews, direct observation, participant observation, and physical artifacts. So for example, documents means, right, MFI, if you go there, they have their annual reports. Archival records means computer files, organizational records that MFIs have. For example, Berandina, one of the MFI interviews, yeah, computer files, sometimes organizational record. The interviews, actually remember that was the main method that I used to collect data. I had in-depth interviews and one focus group interview. I'm sure you know the difference between focus group and in-depth interviews. Then, of course, I use observations, direct observation, participant observation. Then physical artifacts means basically sometimes you have to use things like computer, books, physical things that are available, right? Because things sometimes they influence the study. Because I think there's a theory called actor network theory that looks at how, for example, the company, for example, is doing work manually. All of a sudden, company buys computers, and now they are going to do the work by using computer. Then how the introduction of computer has changed the lives of the employees. It will have a profound change in the lives of the people, right? So I think remember, this is not a human. So I think these physical artifacts also can influence your study. But out of these 6, I think don't think that in case study method you have to use all these 6 sources. No, I think you can do a case study method even with interviews. In fact, I think most people use interviews and documents in order to carry out case study research. Okay, this is consideration in case study method. Human subjects protection. So like any other research, I think case study method also, I think it is very important to look at ethics part, right? Because you need to take informed consent from all the parties. In my case, I think I got the informed consent. I asked whether you are willing to, give your ideas, opinions to my study. And I promised them I am not going to divulge your identity to outside people, to cases, to individuals I did. So I think when you are looking at this ethical thing, you have to protect those who take part in study from any harm, deception. What do you mean by that? Deception. Deception means you have to make sure people are not contacted by third parties in future for further research. I think it is not ethical. So sometimes what happens is you tend to give the contacts of your participants to external people. They might contact these people. That is not ethical. And the other thing that you must know under deception is you should never lie about the objective of the study. Some people say different things, but you have to say, look, this is the objective. So I think you have got to protect the privacy and confidentiality. As I mentioned, you are not going to, divulge, reveal their identity. And of course, you have to take special precaution that might be needed to protect especially vulnerable groups. Sometimes your research is all about prostitutes in Sri Lanka, disabled people. Then you got to be extra careful because those are marginalized people in the society, right? And in case study method, it's very important to do a pilot study. I can remember I earmark one counselor and one owner manager of the client. Then I conducted 2 interviews. Then I noticed that some of the questions that were in my semi-structured questionnaire were not clear. So I think I was able to perfect them thanks to the pilot study. And not only that, if you are very new to qualitative research, you are very nervous. So by conducting a pilot case study with a couple of people, you can get the confidence, right, to move on. Then how you are going to analyze the data in case study method. So I think I'm sure those who are familiar with uh, qualitative research, the main analytical method that we use is called thematic analysis, right? Some people say coding or indexing. So here in case study method also we use the same thing, thematic analysis. However, there are special techniques and strategies recommended by Robert Yin to use in case study analysis. So let me explain some of these strategies and techniques. As you can see on this slide, there are 4 strategies prescribed by Yin. One is relying on theoretical proposition. I think this is very important when it comes to analysis. Let's say one of your theoretical proposition is, let's say, public-private partnerships give a lot of benefits. That is a proposition. So I think when you get the data, then when you look at the data, I think you can see the quotations of people, participants, they talk about benefits. Then developing the case description, actually, we don't use this method for an exploratory case study. So actually, this is we use especially in descriptive case studies where you don't have a research question or objective. I think I think we should not consider this here. Then using both quantitative and qualitative data, yeah, that strategy that is not necessary for our discussion today. Why? Because quantitative and qualitative, this one we use for mixed cases. So remember, though our today discussion revolves around qualitative case studies could be quantitative mix also. So when you are doing a mixed case study, then when it comes to analysis, you have to use quantitative data and qualitative data collected. And the last one is very important for a qualitative research, rival explanations, right? So I think in my study, I think I got a very nice rival explanation. For example, I think I presume everybody says cooperation, counsel and client will give a lot of benefits to both parties. However, one counselor said no, it doesn't work. Interaction is not important. So that is a very different view, rival view, right? So I think qualitative research, remember, there's a space for rival explanation, right? That is the beauty of qualitative research, right? So I think then I asked why. Then he would give some explanation why interaction collaboration doesn't work. Then we got some techniques, 5 of them. I think remember case study method most important. Analytical techniques is pattern matching. This is for me most frequently used one. Pattern matching is you look at uh, you know whether there's a pattern emerging. For example, when you read the data, always data informs, okay, the communication is important in interaction. I think let's say I interviewed 18, 15 says communication is important for interaction with the land or the manager. So then I could see a pattern. So that is matching for you. Explanation building means actually this is very important. This is kind of hypothesis building. You don't have a hypothesis in qualitative research, do you? What it means, now in my study, I think I got a surprise finding. Then when I collected the data, interaction between the client, those are the parties. So I think I look at whether the interaction of these two parties improves the intervention, counseling. But I found out there could be another person that influences this intervention. So what is the third party? That is the spouse of the client. So that means, let's say the client is a man, the wife, the woman. So I think then counselors often said when they are giving counseling, actually this counseling take place often at client's home. Wife also engages in the conversation. So finally, I actually came up with a kind of a hypothesis. Okay, the wife or the spouse input also is important to improve the counseling. Then we got another two time series analysis. We don't use in qualitative research, we use in quantitative research. Then logic models. Logic model means we know only cause and effect. But logic model, we have cause effect. That means cause leads to effect leads to another cause, something like that. That is our discussion today. It is also used in quantitative. But last one is very important, cross synthesis. What do you mean by that? When you're doing a multiple case study, I think you got to do two types of analysis within the case analysis, cross-case analysis. So that means cross-case analysis means you have to compare and contrast findings within cases. Right? In my case, I had to really look at, I got state MFIs, non-state MFIs, bank MFIs. Then I would look at, right, what are the common themes, what are the similarities, dissimilarities, that sort. So I think if you look at these strategies and techniques for an exploratory qualitative case study, I would say I could use relying on theoretical propositions if the propositions are there. Very important. So two strategies I could use. Then under techniques, pattern matching is important. Matching is important. And if it is a multiple case study, cross case is important. Right. And I think this is not applicable to a case study per se, but for all the qualitative research types, whether grounded theory, phenomenology, narratives, ethnography, right? Are we going to use in vivo for data analysis? My candid answer is, when it comes to analysis, better to do the analysis manually, right? Thematic analysis, right? But still use in vivo, right? In vivo you can use to store the data, right? In a systematic manner, in a logical manner. Store your audios, interview audios, your transcripts, and then if you have your themes identified, then I think in NVO, I think you can do coding, right? Because this is actually not inductive coding, then it's kind of a deductive coding because you have already identified the themes manually. So then there's an option, drag and drop, can nicely prepare all your themes in NVO, and it will help you to do modeling, right? Now you can have nice models, mind maps thanks to NVO. And above all, I like NVO. You can do a bit of analysis, right? When I say analysis, it's like a cross-evaluation, right? Now let's say you have interviewed let's say 6 counselors. So I can categorize counselors based on junior counselors, senior counselors, male counselors, female counselors. Then based on their gender, right, their occupation, then we can look at the themes, right? Whether themes are influenced by their gender, something like that. This is not, this is a fascinating thing because you are not going to generalize anyway, but you can do a kind of a cross analysis. So I think I recommend you to do the analysis manually. However, use NVO. I think it's not difficult. I think you can learn. NVO has got a lot of features in it, but for your study, I think you need about couple of hours to learn what is needed for your study. Okay, then we are moving to our final stuff, validity and reliability. So then once I finish, if you can ask questions, I guess. I think these two concepts. I think I could remember when I was making a presentation, I could remember in the audience, one asked me, can you use validity and reliability in qualitative research? It is used only in quantitative research. That's what the guy at the audience asked me. And the answer is no, these concepts can be used in qualitative research in particular case study. Jin says you have to use this one, right? So by the way, what is validity? What is reliability? So as you are aware, validity is all about accuracy and truthfulness of your findings, whereas reliability is consistency and repeatability, right? So, so how can we achieve these validity and reliability in case study method? So in validity, so there are three types of validity: construct validity, internal validity, external validity. Construct validity in case study method. So basically you are going to identify correct operational measures for the concepts being studied, right? In quantitative research, you want to see whether variables selected are correct, something like that. So, but here we don't have variables, but here instead, how do we measure construct validity? By having multiple data sources. Within that, rather than collecting data by interviews, if you could use maybe observations, then that will improve the validity, construct validity. The internal validity, in general, internal validity means in quantitative research, we look at whether there's a causal relationship between X and Y. But here in qualitative research, we don't have independent, dependent variable, and thus we use pattern matching. We try to look at whether there's a pattern emerging. Then external validity means we look at generalizability. So I think here cases I said to you, we look at theoretical generalization, not the statistical generalization. However, if you are doing multiple case study, to a certain extent, findings can be generalized rather than using a single case study. Reliability, as I mentioned earlier, can be achieved by following the case study protocol. Remember, we learned case study protocol, and of course, you can improve the reliability of a case study method by using NVO, because you can show all the data, all the evidence that are stored in the computer in NVO files. That enhances the reliability of your study. So then replication logic. I think if you read a case study, the literature, it talks about replication in case study. So I think there are two types of replication: literal replication, theoretical replication. Now, literal replication means when you are selecting cases, you got to select similar cases. Theoretical replication, when you are selecting cases, you got to select dissimilar cases. In my case, I think I could remember I was choosing two state MFIs, two bank MFIs. So I think there were similar cases, dissimilar cases. So thereby you can achieve literal replication and theoretical replication. And finally, triangulation. So combining multiple theories, methods, observers, and empirical materials to produce a more accurate, comprehensive, and objective representation of the object of the study. I think triangulation improves the comprehensiveness of your study, and it improves the accuracy. So how can you do that? There are four types of triangulation: data, investigator, method, and theory triangulation. When I say data, right, there are three subcategories: time, space, person. So I think it is advisable if you can collect data in different time intervals. But unfortunately, if you are doing, let's say your master's, let's say it's a component, I don't think you can, collect data in 2023, 2024. You have to collect data at one particular time, cross-sectional. So you can't achieve it. Space, yes, you can achieve. So rather than collecting data from one space, better to collect data from different spaces. Yep, person, yes, from not only one person, number of persons, you can achieve data triangulation. Investor triangulation means, but in my research, I think when I was the PhD candidate, I had to collect data. So I could not achieve investigator triangulation. So, but for a larger projects, I think data cannot be collected by one person, one investigator. You need to have number of people. So thereby, you can achieve investigator triangulation, because if you have many investigators, they have different perspectives about one phenomenon. Then method triangulation. So when you say method, in your research, you can use quantitative, qualitative, both, right? So if you can use both quantitative and qualitative, then the study is comprehensive, high accuracy. But the thing is, sometimes it is difficult to do a multiple case study. Often I discourage my students multiple mixed studies. Why? It is time consuming. Sometimes you cannot complete on time. However, it is the best method because you are collecting data via quantitatively qualitative. Thereby, you can achieve method triangulation. When you say method triangulation, you have design level triangulation, that is called between method triangulation. And when you are collecting the data, you have within method triangulation. There are two types: between method, within method triangulation. What do you mean by between method? Between method means you got to select, okay, in my study, whether I want to only qualitative data or quantitative data or mix, right? That is called between method triangulation. If you have quantity and quality, both method triangulation. Then let's say you have selected, let's say quality, then under quality, how are you going to collect data? Are you going to collect data only through interviews, or are you going to use secondary data or observation? So if you improve more data types under qualitative, then we call it within the method triangulation, right? Then theory triangulation means if you are using more than one theory, you can achieve theory triangulation. So in my study, actually, I said you I use co-production theory as the overarching theory. In addition to that, actually, I use other theories. I use social capital theory, right? Likewise, I use few theories. Thereby, I could achieve what you call theory triangulation. Okay, I think I would have been a bit fast. I'm sorry about that, given the time limitation, but I wanted to cover, I think, the salient features of case study method. I mean, rather than uh, me restricting to only few parts of case study method. Hope I have covered uh, you know most important things in case study method. Now, if you have any questions, now it is the time.
Thank you, Professor Ruan. It was really informative, and I'm happy to be in the same panel. I would like to know about the diverse data collection methods which are frequently used in the case study method for the qualitative research.
Yeah,
It would be great
yeah, Bhavatarani, now as I mentioned, I think there are 6 sources. However, according to my experience and according to my colleagues' experience, I think case study method mostly researchers, they use interviews, in-depth interviews and focus group interviews. In addition to that, they use secondary data, annual reports, organization reports. That's all. But mainly in-depth interviews, Bhavatarani.
Thank you, sir. And I have one more question. When it comes to the reliability and the validity of findings which we get from the literature, so what are the strategies or practices which could be implemented to enhance the validity and reliability, since like my field of study is based on the qualitative for my initial research development. So the reliability and validity is, I feel it's more important. So
And the
maybe
thing
sir
is,
could.
when it comes to case study, because thing is, as I mentioned, Bhavatarani, I mean, even if you read the journal articles, right, that use qualitative methods, I think you don't talk much about reliability and validity. That's why one of the gentlemen in the audience asked me, I mean, why you are talking about reliability and validity in qualitative research? So that's much spoken in quantitative domain. So, however, in qualitative research, in particular case study, I think we always talk about reliability and validity. Especially reliability, I think we can improve, as I mentioned, by following the protocol. So that means reliability is repeatability. So that is a scientific way. I mean, let's say if you are doing the case study method, my same study, counselor one, I think you got to follow these steps, right? And I said to you on another point, how we can improve the reliability is storing data in NVO. So when it comes to validity, so I think validity you talk about, I think that validity is, I think we discuss a lot, especially in quantitative research, don't we? Now, for example, we talk about, causal relationship, cause and effect relationship, whether, the accuracy of the data, we use different jargons in quantitative research, but here, instead of that, we use, things like multiple sources, right, to improve the validity. That means when you are collecting data, not only from interviews, you have more. Then when analyzing the data, use the method pattern matching. And not only that, you use case study method so that you can generalize your finding. Because case study method, multiple case study, you got more cases, more participants. So thereby you can improve the validity. So that is important. But more than that, I guess in case study method, what is important is uh, you got to decide when you can use case study method, right? And how can you research questions, how I what, then what is your unit of analysis? That is very important. Then, of course, once you collect the data, how can you use pattern matching, explanation building, rival explanation, and cross-case synthesis to analyze the data? Hope my answer was clear, Bhavatarini.
Yes, sir. It was very clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. About survey. Then you have published your findings in QI journals, Scopus Index journal. Then some of the papers are review papers. So then, what role of qualitative case studies play in writing review papers, in conducting research in your field of study?
Yeah, when it comes to review paper, so initially we have to find a literature gap in order to get the paper to publish. So for that, the qualitative research plays a major role, where you will be like certain papers based on case studies, where in particular area we collect a set of papers, we analyze the findings which they have reported, and based on it we will certain cases we will be developing theories as well, and also like case study method. I feel like it's more useful when it comes to get the background information of a particular field. So when it comes to my field, where my trial or qualification, so by reading the papers which are already done at lab scale. So through that, I got a broad idea about what the background information is. And when it comes to the lab scale experimental quantitative research, for that as well, the qualitative research plays a major role, where from the very scratch, where we find the research gap to conduct an experiment. So for that, I had to go through the whole literature reviewing part, where I'll be doing the multiple case studies, as mentioned, the exploratory one. So by analyzing it, I got the research gap where I'll be working on my research. And for the research to be conducted, we have to have a proper methodology. So even to develop the methodology, the case study method is really useful, where you will be referring to previously published papers, and through that you will be deriving the methods, and you will have a research plan, and then from onwards you will be conducting the research. So I believe the case study method is useful in writing a review as well as conducting a lab scale and also the pilot scale experiments for a quantitative research.
Thank you. Dear researchers, don't hesitate to ask any questions because we all are learning. We are sharing experiences. We are opening new horizons in the field of research. Therefore, please ask any questions if you want further clarification.
Okay, Professor One, can you hear me?
Yes,
I
sir.
can hear you.
Yes, I'm Dinesh from Business Faculty, Professor One.
Yeah,
This is
Dinesh.
regarding very interesting, I think very difficult topic you talk about within 1 hour. I know that this case study and qualitative research is very difficult area to be explained within 1 hour. I think you gave a lot of insights. Thank you very much. And I have few clarification about now you talk about this validity and reliability. I have seen some people argue that when you come to this qualitative, more interpretive approach of case studies, we are not using this validity and reliability. It's a topic of more into positivist quantitative research. Instead, they use this trustworthiness and transferability, reflexivity as some sort of the qualities of a qualitative research when you communicate the findings about trustworthiness, transferability, reflexivity. Then what about your view, Professor?
Yeah, Professor Dinesh, you are correct. I have seen that when I'm supervising the students and even the papers, they talk about transferability sort of things. But this one, this validity, reliability, construct validity, I think is something that is discussing. I think the reason being, Professor Dinesh, I think I learned that is Robert Ginn actually is a positivist person.
Yes.
I started off with quantitative research, and if you really look at the way he approaches case studies, more aligned towards quantitative approach. That's why you can see the shadow of quantitative part in the qualitative part, right? So that's how I look at, right? But if I look at in general qualitative research, you are correct. They talk about transferability, stuff like that, Professor Dinesh.
Even reflexivity also, some people report, no, while they were doing this analysis, their
Correct. But
experience
that's a very important question you ask. Reflection, especially now, I think when you are collecting data, qualitative data, reflection is important. So I think couple of interviews, I think then you realize you tend to look at your own behavior as a researcher, right?
Yes.
So what you have done in your data collection, right? Whether you have made mistakes, right? Whether you can change your research semi-structured questioning, or even you can go to the extent of changing your main research questions. You can do that. So that is reflection. That is very important. But you are correct. But if you really look at different research type, I will, for example, now these days everybody talks about IPA, interpretive phenomenology analysis by Smith. So I think then you find different set of words. right? There are some commonalities also, but based on the method, I would say this case study method it got critical. Yin often talks about these validity and reliability.
Yes, Professor, thank you. Another clarification, some people use something practical technique we call peer debriefing. Like sort of a particular maybe instead of validity and reliability, like to assure the trustworthiness of the findings, they use something called peer debriefing. Once you find this thing from a small sample, sometimes you cannot generalize, but as you correctly mentioned, theoretically, analytically, you can generalize. Some people say normalization. Therefore, they use this term called peer debriefing as a technique. What about Professor? Anything about that one? I'm not a qualitative person, but
To be
maybe in
honest with you,
practice.
Dinesh, Professor Dinesh, I am not familiar with that, right? I think I should learn that one, Professor Dinesh. I'm sorry.
It's simple idea. I got like what you have found, you debrief to the experts or the people in the field, whereby you can see whether your findings in the qualitative research is having some trustworthiness. That's a technique.
Yeah. Basically, what we do is, I don't know whether I am talking in the same line. So I think being a qualitative researcher, so in general, what we do is, Professor Dinesh, once I get the data, right? So I think when after analysis, yeah, you may have some certain themes, right? So I think it is very important to talk to the participants, right? And maybe the experts, and to double check whether your themes are correct, right? So I think, and it is reported, even I have seen that in journal articles also, right? I don't know what the correct word that you say, to double check, to improve the trustworthiness, right? Whether then what happens is, I mean, you have come up with things, from participants' point of view, they don't make any sense. So just to double check, I think you need to do that as a matter of practice. I don't know whether you are meaning the same thing, Professor Dinesh.
Yes, I mean that sort of common sense. I mean, yes, that is, yes, yes. I feel the idea is that. Thank you, Professor.
Right. Okay, Professor Dinesh.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, I have a question. It's not a question. Robert Yin has published several books on case study research. There are many versions. So then these are demanded books in our library. So then are there other popular books like that on the case study method, sir?
Dr. Nari, good question. Right now, in my case, actually, I use Yin's case study book religiously, right? I mean, so as my friends also. However, there are a few books written on case study. For example, now in the literature, you can see these names that pop up often. For example, there's one called Robert K. Stake, right? Now we are familiar with Robert K. Yin, right? This is Robert K. Stake. So I think he has written a book called Art of Case Study Method. I think that is available. In addition to that, we have got another person called Helen Simons. So there's a book written called Case Study Method in Practice. So and there's another one. I think the name is Michael Patton. So he has also written. However, the most popular one is Robert K. Yin. And I don't know whether you have grabbed the new book. I have got a 2018 one. I don't know whether you have got in your library. So I got the e-book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an. I think I would say that it's a newer one, Dr. Nain, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's available at library, sir.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah. Thank you. So, dear researchers.
Yeah. There's a question from the audience.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Professor Ruan, they are asking, can you please explain the embedded case studies within brackets, multiple units of analysis, it seems. So, could you give examples to explain how embedded case studies could be conducted?
This is something that is not very common. Now, when you say embedded case study means you have a case study within a case study. I think that if you really look, his book actually it explains. For example, let's say, if you take university as a case, main case, so within that there could be, let's say, subgroup, let's say janitorial, right? So janitorial is embedded in the main case. So in the main case, then you are interviewing few people. Unit of analysis means, the lecturers or something like that. But sometimes within the main case, you have to have got the embedded case as the janitorial staff. So then the unit of analysis may be the janitorial group or the individual janitorials. So the main case, and within that you can have an embedded case. But to be honest with you, I know I have read it, but I have never done an embedded case, but it's quite possible. So are there any students or researchers in here who are following case study method in the audience?
Yes. Any researchers, so you can answer the questions. Do you use case study research method in your research?
Yeah. And the other thing is, Dr. Naini, I'm more than happy. Please share my telephone number and the email address with fellow researchers. So I think if they have any questions, I'm more than happy to help. Right?
And thank you so much, sir. It's a great help to have your phone number and email address. So then, thank you so much. We are very grateful to our resource persons for opening our eyes to a new direction, and we are looking forward to contacting you again in vivo to have a new session with qualitative data analysis. Please accept our heartfelt thanks to both of you. Dear researchers, please wait till the next research launch to have a different talk in our research journey. Until then, I wish you a wonderful month ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.